just blows my mind. Every time I smell it, I can't get enough of it. I just love it. And I still, to this day, I've gone out and, helped make Flipper Cafe and a little bit of Western food here. And I just get, I want to go back to Thai food every time. Is where, my heart lies.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. We've discussed a few times how hotel restaurants down under have changed dramatically over the last few decades, where food and beverage offerings are no longer a means to an end for hotel guests, but destinations in their own right. How do you create a restaurant in a hotel setting that goes toe-to-toe with standalone restaurants? Adam Woodfield is the executive chef of the Quincy Hotel in Melbourne, which includes Salted Egg Restaurant. Adam, how are you? Great. It's good to get you on the show. How's things in Melbourne at the moment?
A little bit cold, but it's picking up, which is great. The end of financial year. Can't wait for that.
Tell us a little bit about the Quincy Hotel and what you're doing there.
Yeah, Quincy Hotel is a part of TFE organisation. It's a little unknown hotel. First post is in Singapore, and this is the second hotel of theirs. They picked Melbourne, being in Flinders Lane, sort of being, iconic strip of Melbourne CBD where a lot of restaurants are and, sightseeing. It's 29 floors. We've got about 290 rooms. We've got the main dining room called Salted Egg, which is situated on the first level. On level 28, we have the Q, which is a rooftop bar and kitchen. And we also have Sing Song, which is a little grab-and-go Asian bubble tea on the ground floor. The owners of TFE, and which is Far East and Toga family, they wanted something to be a little bit different, and they really wanted to go down the path of Southeast Asian. And that's why they sort of headhunted me during COVID to bring a bit of an Southeast Asian twist on their menus, in-room dining and their rooftop.
What was it like for you at that time during COVID when they sort of headhunted you and you looked at the offering and the potential there? Was it something that you felt you could jump straight into?
Yeah, it's something I've always sort of been curious, being in the hotel world. This is my, second real position in hotel corporate environment. I really enjoy it, being this part of my life where I've got a young family. Adds some stability to my life, which is great. It gives me that work-life balance, which I've been seeking for many years, as a lot of chefs do. Be able to come in and create my own menu and do everything I want to do, that's where I thrive and I really enjoy. I don't really like walking into venues that already have the chef in place, and you can't really get much creativity going. You just have to follow what they want you to do. Where here, they just pretty much said, the world's your oyster. Show us what you want to do. And ever since they've been so supportive of the food, the style of service we do. Just from in-room dining to bar snacks and everything, they've just been really supportive and 100% behind us, which is great.
You've worked at some extraordinary restaurants and even had your own in New York as well, which we'll get into shortly. But are there challenges in creating a restaurant like Salted Egg in a hotel when you're up against sort of standalone restaurants as well? Oh,
definitely. I think for one, our biggest challenges were on the first level. So visibility is none really, only word of mouth. That's how we've started, especially with the corporate diners around us. Just slowly but surely they've started to sort of spread the word, which is really great. I think people, especially just after COVID, when there was that big push, a lot of quite well-known chefs going into hotels, so many of us were doing that. And it was just, hard. We had, Adam De Silva just one block up at the W. Then we got the Marriott just opened just down the road from us. And then we've got Movenpick, I think another hotel is on Spencer Street. So a lot of chefs in big hotels all around us. So, but I think, one thing we do, we stick to what our vision was, doing Southeast Asian, true Southeast Asian, not make it, what people expecting. I try and do something a little bit different to the common Thai or Southeast Asian restaurants. But then I also have those little comfort dishes that everyone knows that are always the biggest sellers.
I want to explore salted egg in detail a bit later on, but take us back to when you were young. Where did you grow up and what sort of role did food play for you?
Yeah, I sort of grew up New South Wales, born and raised in a little place called Ballina, south of Byron for many years, up until I was in about primary school, and then family moved to Sydney, where my parents are originally from. But growing up in Ballina, my mother was never a great cook, but my grandmother, she was an amazing cook, especially when it came to sweets. So she used to always have us kids helping her in the kitchen, doing Mars bar slice, doing apple pies, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's where my sweet tooth started, with my nan up in Ballina. And then when we moved back to Sydney, my other grandmother, she also was, very good to us kids by baking, coming over to our house and really showing us all the sweets. There's something about Nana's and showing the kids all about sweets and cakes and everything. I absolutely love it. It's the fondest memories I have as a kid. It was with both my grandmothers. And then I think my parents got divorced when I was in about grade 6. My father ended up moving to Victoria, and me and my sisters and mum, we stayed in Sydney. But we tried to do that little transition down to Melbourne to be closer with Dad. My sisters and mother really didn't like Melbourne. I think it was just the weather they hated. Being from Sydney, they love Whale Beach and all the northern beaches. You come to Melbourne, St Kilda Beach ain't really that great. And when you go down to Sorrento and all that, it's nice, but my God, you're game to go swimming there. So we all decided to move back to Sydney. I really didn't enjoy Sydney when I went back. I think I had a lot of really close mates in that 1 year in year 7. So I made the move back to Melbourne to be with my father. And that's when my father really ingrained in me about cooking and everything. He was an all right cook, being a single man. He had to cook for his son and everything a couple of times. He was pretty handy with the microwave, but he also, did his own little spin on things. He had this classic dish called Galliano chicken, which was, nowadays it's horrendous. You would not even eat it, but back then it was amazing. It was just pretty much pan-fried chicken with some mushrooms, some dill, Galliano and cream. It was just one of those early 90s, late 80s dishes. But then my father, he also hated to be cooking all the time. So he was a property developer, so he liked to eat out a lot and, sort of do the long lunches with businessmen and everything like that. So I got very fond memories. I think it was in year 10, and I was talking to my father, I've got to do work experience somewhere at the time, and we were at Joe's Garage on Brunswick Street. And Joe's Garage was very famous back in the mid-90s, early 90s on Brunswick Street. Always busy, always very popular. And I remember one night sitting there, my dad was like, why don't you look at these guys, look how much fun they're having. Why don't you go, when we pay the bill, go ask if you can drop a resume in and see if you can get a little bit of a job or do work experience here. And sure enough, after I finished, I asked, they looked at me, I was like this pimply 15-year-old kid, and they just said, here, fill out this form, and probably just screwed it up and threw it in the bin when I left. Never heard from him really, but that's when my father, he had a couple of friends that owned a pub up on Spencer Street here, and then he had another friend that owned a sort of sandwich place down on Flinders Lane under the old stock market area. So I did a bit of work experience in those places, really enjoyed it. The pub was great, it's hustle and really hustle bustle, a lot of, foul language going on, music blaring. It was just great. It's everything a kid could dream of. And so, yeah, I didn't really take much notice about the cooking and everything like that. It was more, just taking deliveries, cleaning, a lot of washing up, doing a little bit of cutting here and there, but, pretty much glorified kitchen hand at the end of the day for 2 weeks. But then I just fell in love with it. I remember I was doing home economics at that time because, it was one thing I enjoyed, was cooking. And ever since work experience after that, I just went really hard at home economics at school. It was the only subject I ever got A's in. And I remember asking my parents, like, can I please just drop out of school? I want to start my apprenticeship early. And both parents were like, no, need you to finish your VCE and then you can go do whatever you want. And pretty much I just had to suck it up through the grind through year 12, which, wasn't my best years. But once I got out of that, that's when I went straight into kitchen straight away. I remember, I think by January, after I did Schoolies Week and did the Christmas, I was just basically looking for anywhere to employ me as an apprentice.
Where did you sort of get your foot in the door, and what were those first couple of years like for you as an apprentice?
Yeah, not the first job was French patisserie because I wanted to stay with sweets because I really enjoyed it. So I started a place on up in Hawkesburn Village called Faru French Pastries. Fabrice was head baker there. His mother, to my knowledge, was very I can't remember her name, but she was at the time very popular. She had one or two very popular bakeries around Armidale and all that. And so her son started up Faru French Pastry. So it was him, myself, and another baker who left being an architect because he also loved cooking. And so it was just three of us. And basically I would start about 1 in the morning and then I'd finish about 2 in the afternoon. And so that would go on 5 days a week. Back then, I was only earning about $110 for a full week, but I just loved it. Lost my social life, lost a lot of friends because, you just have to work pretty much. You had Monday, Tuesday off and you just worked through the rest of the week. So when all my mates were out partying or going to clubs and concerts, I basically had to work, which I didn't mind, but after about a year it got a little bit depressing, and that's when I started to think about, right, what do I really want to do, this kind of early morning work? And that's when I sort of started to have a look at, I went for a breakfast position at Il Forneo. I was just a little breakfast hand there, just doing, looking after all the little eggs, poached fruit sort of dishes and everything like that. So that's when I sort of moved into a more of a morning role. I got to sort of look after my own section, everything like that. And Il Forneo back then was only famous really for its breads and pastries and everything. The breakfast was so-so, but, it was more about all the breads. And working for Andre there at the time was great. He really opened my eyes to, how cool and how much fun baking can be, especially when you've got the high-tech machinery. You don't have to be there all night doing all the proving and everything like that. So that was great. But I think I was there for about a year and started to get very bored doing the same thing. And working at Il Forneo under the Van Handels, that's a family that owned Il Forneo. They also had Stokehouse at the time, and so I was able to do a transition from Il Forneo to Stokehouse. I had a couple of openings, so I went over there as first year apprentice at this time.
How different was that kitchen compared to what you were used to?
Oh, mate. Stokehouse, I've just got so many fond memories of. I spent 2.5 years there. I worked under Justin. He was just on the way out at that time. He sort of put together a really good team, a bunch of party boys, but my God, they work hard and they play hard. And then you had upstairs, which was a whole nother world. Everyone just working downstairs, as soon as there was an opening upstairs, everyone just rushed, try to get in. But at the time, that was Michael Lambie was running it, and it was very hard to get into that kitchen. I had a couple of mates from downstairs, Tony Twitchett, who's now over at Taxi. He went up there first, and Damien was another one that went up after him, and then Tony's brother Paul went up. And then by that stage, Paul Rayner came in, and that sort of became even more tricky to get into. He was very particular of who came in, but it was just, I loved working in that restaurant, that environment. I got made so many close friends, met my wife there. And yeah, still to this day, like I sort of bump into a couple of faces when I was at Lucas Group and everything else. It's just a small world. But my chef after Justin was a chef called Jean Alain. He sort of ran the casino down in Tasmania. And when he came to Stokehouse, he really showed me how to be a true businessman, operator, not just a chef. He made me head apprentice as a second year apprentice there. So he made me look after 12 young boys, which was hard. There was a couple that were third and fourth year, but I sort of learned how to manage people with him, which was great. And then he just sort of showed me everything about the business side, the money side, which to this day, I drill into every chef that comes into my kitchen that they have to understand, not just about, you got to have great knife work, you got to have a great palate, but nowadays you have to be more business smart than just know how to run a kitchen.
Southeast Asian cookery has been a real hallmark of your career. Where did that begin?
So I accidentally fell into it. I was with at the Tuscan Grill and the Latin at the time when it folded, and I remember turning up there and then a week later having to go and we lost everything. Everyone lost all their holiday pay and everything like that. Again, another great restaurant and another, I've got very fond memories working for the Marchettis. But from there, the head chef of the Tuscan Grill, he scored a gig opposite the MCG called, I'm going to say Phoenix. Yeah, that's it, Phoenix. Just opposite Jellymont Station there. And it was two guys out of Hong Kong. They were the owners and they wanted to do Australian Hong Kong style or Cantonese cuisine mix. So kind of like, I think at the time that's when the Adelphi, T. Gezard, sort of was starting to become very, very popular. So we sort of opened up a year or two after he sort of opened, and that was the sort of vision these two owners wanted. My head chef at the time, he knew a little bit, and so he brought me on because he knew I was looking for work, and there we did. I discovered ponzu, fish sauce, palm sugar, all these things which I'd never ever used before. I've always been French, Italian or Australian sort of cuisine leading up to then. And that's where I sort of like, I really like this. This is different, we was doing a bit of fusion, but there was some things my chef would show me like master stocks and braising pork hock and everything like that in master stocks. And I just loved it. It was something new and different. Because I knew if I stayed with, I think, the Western style cuisine, I would get very bored and probably move on. I'm that kind of person. If I get too comfortable, I want to move on. So this just sort of sparked something in me, which was like, I think I found something I want to really sort of look at. So, and that was probably about 4 years into cooking professionally. I worked in this kitchen. From there, I think I worked for him for a year and a half, and me and the wife wanted to go up to Sydney. We wanted to try something different. So we made the move up there, and that's when I didn't have a clue what this restaurant was. I just went around Darlinghurst handing out my CV, as you did back in the day, and I had all my restaurants I wanted to hit up. And so my flatmate, close mate of mine, he worked for Zombo Records at the time, and I asked him, I said, I've got a call back for this restaurant called Jimmy Licks. Have you ever heard of it? And he goes, oh my God, that's where I take everyone, for the record company to come over. We always go Jimmy Licks. It's, it's very similar to Long Grain, but it's in the cross, and it's really cool and different. So I ended up working under Will Merrick for a short amount of time there at Jimmy Licks before Will took off to Bali. And working at Jimmy Licks, that really cemented this is the cuisine I want to do. I love it. It's all new to me. I had great chefs in that kitchen who really helped me and guided me through it. Because when Will left, they appointed me as and another chef, Fiona, who'd been there for a year and a half, both of us as joint head chef. And that was a really great partnership because Fiona knew how to, keep the kitchen running. She knew all the little tricks Will knew, but she didn't have the creative spark. She didn't really like to come up with new dishes. She liked to use the same old dishes and change them up. Where I sort of worked with her and just said, I'll do some research. How about this curry? How about this stir fry? This. And so we had a really good balance there. And Jimmy Licks back then was a force. It would be packed from 5 p.m. Joe Eltram would have it, down clockwork, how everything was going to look like, the drinks, the way the food, the way the service was great. And then we had Justin Maloney, the GM there, and my God, he came from Long Grain, and did he know how to control the crowd and pack it out and, schmooze people when they had to wait more than half an hour for their table and all that. It was just a real eye-opener and a really great way, to run a business. So those 2 restaurants really, showed me this is, the cuisine you should stick with.
What was it about Thai and Southeast Asian cuisine? Is there any specific dishes or techniques or combinations that really sort of got you interested?
Yeah, I think it was starting off using, I remember when I was put on the wok section, Will put me on there. I had no idea how to control the heat. When we're cooking with pork fat, how you got to do it nice and slowly, and then you cook your paste out and all that. That was all new to me. Using sugar and fish sauce instead of salt and pepper, I was just like, this is amazing. This is different. Had a great, Mai was our sous chef at the time there, and she went on to China Doll and a couple of other places, and she was the one that sort of took my hand and guided me, when it came to flavours and everything. This is where you need to fix it a little bit more, add a little bit more of this. I remember nights where we would clean up salmon, and she would keep all the rib cages, a little bit of meat on there, she would steam them, and then at the end of the night she'd just flour them, chuck in the deep fryer and put chili salt on. That would be our bar snack after work at the bar, just chewing on some bones and everything like that, which I just couldn't believe. I've done pig trotters and ears and everything like that, but bones, I thought, no way would you eat it. But the way the Thais do it, they don't let anything go. They use as much as possible they can off the animal. And that really, blew my mind. Shrimp paste was another one, something that stunk so bad. How good can it be when it goes into a curry paste or goes into a sauce? It was just those things. And then I just remember the first time I smelled kaffir lime fruit, not kaffir lime leaf. We do enough kaffir lime leaf, Julian, you get sick of it. But the kaffir lime fruit, the perfume from the skin, the bitterness and the sourness from the juice, that was just like, just blows my mind. Every time I smell it, I can't get enough of it. I just love it. So those things, just brought me in there. I didn't want to, do anything else. I just love it. And I still, to this day, I've gone out and, helped a mate flip a cafe and a little bit of Western food here. And I just get, I want to go back to Thai food every time, or Southeast Asian. But predominantly Thai food is where, my heart lies.
Who have been the real sort of important people and mentors and venues that you've worked at as you've sort of triggered this sort of foray into Southeast Asian cuisine?
Yeah, Will was, he was great. He was just always excited about doing something new, something different. So he was, and I worked briefly with him 6 months, but, he really just showed me, how you should plate up food when it comes to Southeast Asian, the flavours, the textures and everything like that. He was a real inspiration. And then, there's David Thompson's another one. Every Australian chef that, does Southeast Asian always refers back to David. But David, he and Martin Bowitz sort of, really set the benchmark for Thai food in Australia. Loved going to Long Grain every time. And never, and that's when Martin was the executive chef there. And never, let you down. It killed your wallet, as at that time getting paid a small amount, but it was amazing to go to. I was fortunate enough to have David Thompson do a dinner at my restaurant when he launched his Thai food book too in New York. So we had a mutual mate, Andy Ricker from Pok Pok, introduced me to David, and that dinner we did it 2 nights in a row. That was very special. David brought everything over, krachai, fresh from Thailand, not out of a bottle. He made us, shred our own coconut, to press our own coconut milk. I had to go down to, I forget Zach's last name, Fatty Crab. He was just on in the West Village, 2 blocks from our restaurant, Beetle. And I remember Andy Ricker and I walking down to Fatty Crab asking if we can borrow their coconut presser. And there we are, pushing down Bleecker Street, this coconut presser that looked like someone would have thought it was a bloody cannon coming down, because they look like a cannon and they weigh a ton. So all just to press probably about 5 to 10 litres of coconut cream for David. But, I've never ever done that before, and that was an amazing experience. So, looking at his menu, seeing how he times everything, everything gets made just before service. Then when it's ready, half an hour, that's when service sort of starts. So it's all ready to go, fresh out of the oven, not much cooking needed. That was an eye-opener. The way he seasons things, there's no recipes with his curry paste. He seasons all his spices just to taste. Everyone else will follow it, 20 grams, 80 grams. David just adds a little bit and just keeps tasting as he goes. And I saw that at my restaurant. Then I helped him over at Singapore, and awards when he was awarded NAMA's best restaurant, #1 over there. He did the same thing. I watched him do a simple cooking demonstration, same thing. He kept doing it. And I try to take those little snippets that I learn off David and try and introduce it into my kitchen. It works sometimes, but when you have a bit of a turnover, you need to go back to basics and make sure you've got, the amounts there, so, your costs don't blow out and all that. Andy Ricker was another one also. Being in America, him and I met at, he was getting awarded James Beard Award at the time, and I was chef de cuisine at Public Restaurant in Nolita there, and he was working, doing some dinners out of our restaurant. Brad Farmery, my executive chef, and him were quite good mates. And that's when I first met Andy Ricker. He sort of, he showed me a lot about New York, because I didn't know where to get any of this produce. We went out to Little India out in Flushings and all that, and he sort of took me around a couple of places there, which was really good. Pok Pok, when it opened up in Brooklyn, he used to go out there and watch him do his thing. His cooking is so simple, no fuss, but my God, it's packed with flavour, and that, sort of going from watching David where he does things really well, but he puts a lot of effort into his dishes and everything like that. And it's a masterpiece when it hits your table. And then you look at Andy Ricker. Andy Ricker does, just very little things to his dishes, but packs a punch. It's all about, the herbs he uses, the lime juice, and making sure that, the chilies you're using and everything like that are very true to the Thai sort of cuisine and everything like that. So, yeah.
How did you end up in New York?
Jimmy Licks at the time, we were going to go, Joe Eltram almost did a deal with this other guy to open up Jimmy Licks in New York. I got sat down and was told, is this something you'd be interested? And I said 100%. This has been a goal of my wife and I. We want to be overseas somewhere and have kids overseas, to give them that opportunity to have dual passports somewhere and give them a better life. And so I said 100%, I'm happy to go there. They were happy for me to go up there, because then that means the Jimmy Licks brand would be very secure with the head chef going over there to make sure everything was right. We were happy to put a head chef in at Jimmy Licks in the Cross, and I just come back from time to time and make sure everything's okay, but just start making sure that the US is good and we can open up more. So I think me and my wife were like, great, we only got about 3 months, we're going to go. So we just started selling everything, our car, furniture, everything like that. A month before we were ready to, get our tickets and be about 6 weeks off, the deal went south. And me and my wife really had our heart on it. My wife wasn't having a great time in Sydney. I think that's been close to family and everything like that, and just the amount of traffic and all that was just horrendous. She had to drive one side of the city to the other. So I think going over to New York was something new and different that really excited us. So the deal went south, but we were still keen to go. And so we had our wedding 2 weeks before we were meant to leave, and we just got on the flight, one-way ticket over there, and I landed in public restaurant. So that's how I ended up in New York. I think it was meant to be.
But tell us about, you had your own restaurant in New York. How did that come about, and what was it like running a restaurant in a city that was your own?
It was hard. It was very hard at the time. Thai food didn't really exist back then. We were meant to open the year the GFC happened. So I met my business partner at the time. We were about to get it going, and then bam, that hit, the whole world. And so we went a bit quiet. The investors weren't too keen to invest yet. They just wanted to wait out. So we waited out about, say, 10 to 12 months. And then we sort of teamed back up. So that was pretty scary. But then when we saw, okay, everything seems to be going back, New York seems to get back to itself, its old self. And that's when we secured Grove Street in the West Village, right around 2 blocks from Carrie Bradshaw's house, so right on Bleecker there. So it was a great area. It was we knew it was going to be a good area to open up because a lot of expats, Aussies and Kiwis lived around that area. And that area, was a very wealthy area. They were very keen for new things to pop up. And so, and I think being around that area, you had a lot of really good top quality restaurants around there. Once we passed that real bad problem of the GFC, we signed the contract for the lease on this place, and then we went construction. Halfway through construction, we found out our flooring. We had a basement kitchen, which was a prep kitchen, office, and change rooms. We turned it into, but the roof and the flooring on the ground floor, that caved in. So that added a bit of stress to our finances. So we had to redo the whole flooring and everything like that, which we weren't expecting. So that was the first problem we ran into. I had my first son 2 weeks before opening, which was good and a little bit stressful at the same time. And then the second week of opening, we had I think it was Cyclone Irene. It was like a big snowstorm come through New York and basically blanket New York, and no one could move for about a week. So that was another blow of opening. So I wasn't expecting it. No one really was. We thought it was just going to be a snowstorm that would come through, take about half a day for them to clear the roads, everything go back to normal, but it wasn't to be. It sort of closed down the city for about 5 days to a week. And we could only really service people that were in the area. So, that was pretty hard. Then I think the style of food, we were doing Jimmy Lick's long grain style of Thai food, so modern Southeast Asian. Everything was on white plates. We started off with, not linen, but the butcher's paper on the tables. We started off like that. And then New Yorkers didn't really get it, what was this kind of food that we were serving? It's not like what I can get at my pad thai joint out in Brooklyn and all that. Nor did I want to do that style of food. I want to keep true. I love doing the curries, some stir fries, yes. But, we need to keep our price point up there around $20, $25 US. That's what we sort of aim for our mains. We didn't really want to start doing $12 pad thais or anything like that, $8 pad thais, because we knew we couldn't get the spend up. And, you have one pad thai and you're good. You don't need anything else. And plus, I wanted to keep doing unique and different things that, sort of blew them away. But I still remember Pete Wells for the New York Times. He had the whole fish with 3 flavour sauce and my half duck with mandarin and yellow bean sauce. And I remember him writing in the opening section, or, Beetle opening up, Australian chef, blah, blah, blah. And then it was like, he's serving duck à l'orange, Asian style. I don't understand. That's where I was just like, oh, God. So that really, sort of, put a dent in my ego a little bit. But I was just like, you know what? No, we're going to stick to it because I know this food's good, and, New Yorkers are coming around. But looking back at it now, I believe we were like about 4 years to 5 years too early, because when I left New York, came back to Australia, I think 2 years after I got back, Uncle Boone's opened up, Bunker opened up in Brooklyn. Pock Pock was doing quite well, and then all these other sort of little Thai restaurants, modern style restaurants started opening up everywhere, and now I'm pretty sure they're everywhere now. So we were just a bit before our times, out in New York. But great fond memories in New York. Had my 2 kids there. What a place to have your first restaurant, really. It was a goal of mine to open up in New York when we left, and I can't believe I had the opportunity. Spent 4 years. We had it for 4 years. I, after 3 years, moved to Hamilton Island, but had to come back and do a couple of dinners, and just check on, the state and everything like that before I completely sold my shares and moved completely away from Beetle.
These days you're at Salted Egg and, doing something a little bit different for a hotel restaurant. Tell us a little bit about your food. Is there a dish or two that you could go through that sort of exemplifies what you're doing there?
Yeah. Look, I do love. I love starting off with the beetle leaf. Everyone's got Miang on their menus. When I was at Jimmy Leck's, Will used to do this chicken beetle leaf with jow. Jow's a roast eggplant, capsicum relish. They use it as a dipping sauce for vegetables. We do a smoked duck beetle leaf here using that jow, red nut jam and fresh herbs. When you eat that really brings me back to Thailand. The smokiness from the jow. You get the sweet, the sour, and the saltiness also from using palm sugar, fish sauce, and lime juice. All the herbs, last minute get ripped and thrown in there. So you get your mint and coriander and sawtooth coriander. So you get that real nice freshness. And then at the end, you get all the crunch from the fried shallots and all that. That when you eat that really, sort of brings you to Thailand, I believe, all those flavours that you look for. Using smoked duck sort of gives it that nice sort of modern version. It goes really well with the jow, and, that goes really well all together, wrapped up in a beetle leaf. It's a really great flavoursome mouthful when you eat it. There's another one which I've done for many years, son-in-law eggs. This one is the minute I had it, Will used to do a different version of it, and I couldn't get over it how much a fried egg could taste so good, and have all these different, feelings go through your body. So basically, son-in-law egg is, we lightly steam the egg so it's still soft and runny in the middle. We take the shell off, we roll it in tapioca rice flour and then deep fry it. And then we use the yellow bean sauce. So yellow bean sauce is a fermented soybean paste with palm sugar, ginger, garlic, coriander root, fish sauce, and tamarind to sort of season, balance it out. So you deep fry the egg, you pour the sauce over it, and then we garnish it with a green mango salad, and that's been dressed with a hot and sour dressing. So when you open the egg up, it's super gooey. The yolk is nice and runny. So when you eat it, you get that nice sort of creaminess of the yolk, this sweet and sourness from the yellow bean. And then it just gets finished off by this freshness and this crunch of green mango, lime leaf, and the kick of the hot and sour, which is a lot of chopped chili, fish sauce, and lime juice. That just pops. And everyone that has it, they all think, oh, I don't want to have eggs for lunch or for dinner. Why would I have that? But the minute they have it, they're like, my God, this is great. And it's also got a great story to it. If you don't I get always up on Hamilton Island and here at Salted Egg, we always tell, make sure if they ask the story, you got to sell them this story, because I think this just shows you how much the history these dishes have in them. So back in the day, and it was a dish originally brought from China to Thailand. And back in the day, the man had to win the hand in marriage. And so the mother-in-law would want him to cook something for her. So as useless as men's were back many centuries ago, all he could do was boil an egg. So he boiled an egg. At the back of the stove, he found some caramel sauce. So he put those two together, presented it to his mother-in-law. She loved it, and he won the hand in marriage. So that's why it's called the son-in-law eggs. And every time we tell the guests that, they just love the story and the history behind it. It's a great dish. It's one that it's be very hard to get off our menu. And then I think when I look at another one, which is, really intriguing by the technique, and just something so simple, is our crispy fish salad that we do at the moment with green mango. I've never ever seen anyone do it this kind of style, where we roast the fish loins whole. We use blue grenadier fillets. We roast them whole with just a bit of fish sauce, scrape all the meat off, blend it into breadcrumbs, and then we'll deep fry it and pull it into a raft so it's like a round disc, and basically serve that up on side of a green mango salad, and you break it up. Now, when I first saw that dish, I thought, this is amazing. I've never seen anything like it. And, when I used to do it, people used to be like, I was expecting big chunks of fish. And then once you explain it to them, they fall in love with it. You break it up, you mix it through the salad. It's got all that crunchy texture and everything, which it's all about, is the textures, the flavours and all that go hand in hand with Thai food and Southeast Asian food.
Well, you're doing amazing things, and I know we've just touched briefly on so many things that you have done, but Adam, it's been amazing hearing a part of your story on Deep in the Weeds. Please keep in touch, and we'll have to catch up again soon.
Definitely, Anthony. Thanks so much.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.